Filled to Capacity, where heart, grit, and irreverent humor collide. A podcast for people too stubborn to quit and too creative not to make a difference. Hi, I'm Pat Benincasa, and welcome to Fill to Capacity. Episode 112, Wagging Tails, Open Hearts, the Power of Helping Paws. Now, before we begin, I'd like to take a moment. Minnesota is still grieving the loss of Representative Melissa Hortman, her husband Mark, and their dog Gilbert. What stays with me most is how they lived, quietly, generously, and with a hands-on passion for helping paws. They didn't just support this mission, they lived it. They trained dogs, they gave their time, and they changed lives. Now, this episode is not about loss. It's about the work they loved and the legacy still growing. With that said, now meet Alyssa Golob, Executive Director of Helping Paws. Welcome, Alyssa. So nice to have you here.
Good morning. Yeah, thanks for having me. And I'm so excited to be with you and talk about the work we do.
Listen, I have so many questions for you, but I'm going to start so my listeners can kind of get a sense of who you are. What drew you to Helping Paws, and what made you say yes to stepping in as executive director?
Wow, I love that question. I've always witnessed and believed in the power of dogs healing people. I have two sons. One is 20, finishing his freshman year in college, and he is actually on the autism spectrum. He has Asperger's, and he had quite a hard time through school. Really just didn't quite fit in. Teachers struggled with his high IQ and low EQ at the time.
Let me add, EQ means emotional intelligence. That's how tuned in you are to your own emotions and to other people's emotions.
And he ended up having to do school at home before it was popular during COVID times. And there was no work from home back then. And he was getting quite depressed. And we had two dogs at home. So I would call him every 30, 40 minutes and say, go play with the dogs, go take a break with the dogs, go take a nap with the dogs, go play catch with the dogs. And I truly believe that that interaction and having that unconditional love from this amazing four-legged creature really helped him get through that very hard time. And so when I saw this position available, I was looking for a small nonprofit. And that's kind of my niche. I love a small nonprofit to come build up. And Helping Paws was looking for their first executive director. And I really just couldn't even believe that that was a job. Like, I just couldn't even believe that this was an opportunity. And so I applied and I waited out. I'm sure I made the search committee crazy, but finally got that interview. And I'm grateful every single day that that committee chose me. I'm still sometimes stunned, know that I'm qualified, know that I've got this, but still I'm like living this dream. I'm
Yeah.
living this dream to watch dogs and people help each other. It's just it's quite wonderful.
Oh, yes. I can relate to what you're saying. I loved teaching art. I loved being in the studio classroom, surrounded by intensely creative students and watching them grow into their talent. Whoa, nothing better than that. And I could not believe I got paid to do this.
Right,
It's
right.
such a passion. And I go in every day and see these incredible, creative young people. And I think, whoa, I get paid. So,
Right.
yes, I do understand that pinch me moment. Like, wow, this is wonderful. So,
Yep,
yes,
I love it. Every day I love it.
I want to fast forward a little bit. Then, what's something you've learned about leadership that only this kind of work could teach you?
Well, so when I got to Helping Paws, they did not have an executive director. They had two kind of program leads. One was a development director, and one was the programs director. And so they each kind of ran their own team. And when I got here, those teams were very isolated from each other. They were in silos, really. And so I had to bring these two teams together. I said from the very beginning, guys, like the development team tells the story of the programs team work with these dogs. And if the development team cannot talk to the programs team to tell a good story, even in a nonprofit, there's a business element to it. And the development team is the sales team, and the program team is the product. And we have to be able to work together. And that took a long time. That was a year's worth of work to get those two teams to trust each other and to work together and to see that this symbiotic relationship had to happen for the success of the organization. And I never had to come into an organization and bring two teams that should have been working so closely together and
Mm.
like I said, trust each other. It was kind of wild. I guess what I learned in that situation is just patience and listening and trying to dig like what's behind this and where is this coming from and how do we mend that to move forward. And I think through that, a lot of trust was built, not only with the team, but with me saying, oh, like she understands us and she's going to lead us in a way that feels safe.
The beauty of what you just said, your approach was a problem solving approach based on respect. And the fact that you actually listened and then you probed a little deeper to see what's causing this. I can imagine that that would create some kind of bond between the people you work with, that they say, whoa, she's really looking at this, not judging it. She's looking at it. How can we be better? That's really a hallmark of leadership, as opposed to coming in saying, okay, you guys are going to merge. We're going to be doing, it didn't sound like a top down, this is what we're going to do. It sounded like the
Yeah.
bottom up.
And that's how I've always approached it. I mean, Helping Paws, we're a small, we're growing, but we're a small organization still. And you can catch me vacuuming up a training room or plunging a toilet. I really believe that we're all in it together. Again, that's my kind of love of a smaller nonprofit is this very big team approach. It's not me in an ivory tower. I'll change the light bulb if I have to. Yeah, I think there's a beauty in that. As we get bigger, it's figuring some of that out because my office time has become more important, but you'll still see me out there. I still take dogs for walks and pick up poop.
Okay. I'm curious. It sounds like you have a calendar jammed with to-do lists and you're running a life-changing organization, lots of demands, lots of growth. What keeps you grounded?
The stories, I can hear how a dog helped a veteran or a first responder or someone with a physical disabilities. I probably hear those stories 100 times a week. Or I'm involved telling the story or listening to a story or reading the script of a story that my marketing guy is doing. but it never ever ceases to amaze me. And I think that that's what does it for me, is
Yeah.
that the stories fill me up, even though they have common threads. And even though sometimes it feels like a repeat, for that person, it's not a repeat. For that person, it's their story. I might be hearing a similar story over and over and over and over again. But for that person, that's their life changing story. Those stories fill me every day. And every day, in every meeting I have with my senior staff, I say, it's all about the mission, guys. How do we match dogs and give lifelong independence to people who need them? How do we further independence with the use of an assistance dog? And if the idea you're bringing me or the goal we want, if it doesn't fit into that mission, we ain't doing it. And so my mission is putting dogs with people.
Okay.
And that's my mantra every day. And I think that that's what drives me and fills me up, and feeling like, oh, what are we doing? I'll go down to our Blue Coat Academy and watch the dogs being trained and get filled back up again, and know that one of those dogs, these dogs right now here at our school, are about 6, 7 months old. And I always stand there, and especially we have a day called Puppy Go Home, where at about 9 weeks, we hand the puppy over to the volunteer who's going to help raise it. And it's kind of this like Oprah moment. You get a puppy, you get a puppy, you get a
Oh,
puppy. In that moment, every time, and I've been to several of them now, I look at those puppies and I'm like, God, puppy, in 2 years, you're going to change somebody's life. And so watching the journey of that dog, then it gets matched with the person, and that grounds me and fills me.
okay. Now I have to ask you a question that I know listeners are wanting to know, and you have to be honest here. Okay.
Okay.
How many dog selfies do you have on your phone right now?
Oh, Pat, hundreds, hundreds and hundreds between these dogs. And I have 4 dogs at home.
Of course you do.
I'm living it on both ends. Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's
2 of my dogs at home are retired Helping Paws dogs, a brother and sister.
so it's fair to say that your phone is jammed with a lot of pictures.
So many, so many pictures. My kids will go through it and they're just like, there's no pictures of us, Mom. It's all you and the dogs.
Well, there you have it.
It's true. At any given time, the first picture in my role is a dog. Yeah.
Okay. Now that we have that out in the open.
It's a truth. It's a truth. I'll admit it.
All right. Now, Helping Paws has a huge mission, changing lives through dogs. But let's start simple. What's the first thing people need to understand about what Helping Paws does? What do you guys do?
That's a good question. It's a good place to start. So, Helping Paws breeds, trains, and places service dogs for people with physical disabilities, veterans and first responders with PTSD, and facility dogs such as courthouse dogs, school dogs. We have a dog at a traumatic brain injury rehabilitation center. So, those dogs are helping groups of people. And then our physical disabilities and veteran and first responder dogs are working with one-on-one with their person. So that's what we do. We have our own breeding program. We just went through a very big shift in how we work and train with our dogs. There was a study that came out of Duke University about a year ago that says just like our children, by the time a child is 5, 90% of their brain has developed. And now we know by the time a puppy is 5 months old, 90% of their brain is developed. So we just opened in November a puppy enrichment center, which is attached to our current facility. And it looks like a preschool that any kid would go to. There's bouncy things and ball pits and all kinds of things, all kinds of sensory things. And now our puppies are born at a volunteer's home called a caretaker home. They have the dog in their house and they usually do 2 litters of puppies for us. But now we have a whole team that goes in there and we start training the dog on day 3. So we're touching their paws, we're putting scents under their noses, we're taking them away from their litter mates maybe for 2 minutes a day and then putting them back. And then as they get older, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, they're going on short car rides. We have a lot of problems with dogs that get car sick. They're learning to sleep in a kennel a little bit by themselves and then back with their litter mates. So we're starting to desensitize them from some of the things that were causing temperament issues in our dogs. And our hope is that being intentional will, at the beginning, will end up helping us place more dogs. Not all dogs graduate. Our number is about 60% right now, but our goal is to get to 70 and 80% of our dogs graduating. And so this early intervention is kind of where we're very much focused. After the dog is at the caretaker home, it goes to the volunteer dog trainer. And in our program, you can either help train a dog, come here once a week with that dog and help train the dog with our professional staff, or you can be a host home. And we have our new doggy Uber that comes and picks up all the dogs, just like if you sent your kid off to preschool, picks up all the dogs, brings them to the Blue Coat Academy, and then drives them back home at the end of the day. And those dogs are working with professional trainers. And then at about 2.5, depending on the maturity of the dog, we do what we call pre-matching, and we bring in clients off of our wait list. And it's not just if you're number one, you don't get the next dog. It really they look at the dogs and their skills, and they look at the people on the wait list, and they start bringing them in. And it's like speed dating. Bring in one person and you bring in 3 or 4 dogs, and they work with the person. I can tell you, because I've seen it time and time and time again, the dog picks the person. I've seen a dog do nothing for the guy, or girl with the, meeting the dog. And then the third dog comes out and does everything that person wants it to do and then gives it a big hug at the end. And then after that, we match the dogs and we bring in those people and we teach the person everything the dog knows. And then we have a full after placement team that goes and makes sure that it's working. And we stay in touch with the dog and the person through the life of the dog.
Wow, that sounds very lovingly intentional from start and throughout. I don't say start to finish because it's obvious you keep that relationship going.
Yeah. We're unusual in that way. A lot of agencies that train service dogs have kind of gone to more of a kennel model where they have kennels and at their training facility and they can train more dogs. And so, they're able to place more dogs quickly. And that's amazing because people really need these dogs. But we're comfortable slowing down the process because we believe dogs living in people's homes end up to be a more socialized and confident
Yeah.
dog.
Now, I was reading somewhere you work with a lot of volunteers. I think I saw a couple hundred a year. What
Oh,
keeps people coming back and what makes them stay?
it's about 175 a year. Well, we have a proverb over here that says, come for the dogs and stay for the people. So people come here because they really want to work and help train a service dog. It's like maybe it's been a dream of theirs, or they just love the whole concept of it. But then you start to meet the other people training dogs and the people getting the dogs, and people really fall in love with what this program does. We've had people train 12 dogs for us, 14 dogs for us. They just take a new dog every 2 years. And so I think it's about both having that opportunity. It's a very, very hands-on volunteer opportunity that we're giving people. It's long term. You have this dog in your house for over 2 years usually. So they're very, very committed. And I think our volunteers do get to meet the person that's getting the dog. And when they have that meeting and they see that this person has not been able to leave their house in the past year because of not being able to go into a public space, or because if I leave my house and I drop my keys, I'm not going to be able to get into the car.
Yeah.
I'm now stuck in the hallway of my apartment building until someone comes by. So there's this fear of even just leaving your home. And now we're giving them back that lifeline back. And gosh, I mean, giving someone back their life and their independence and their dignity, I think that's what keeps people involved, is the ability to be able to do that for someone.
Now, I see that Helping Paws works exclusively with golden retrievers and Labrador retrievers. Now, for those folks who are not dog people, what makes these breeds so well suited for this kind of work? But before you answer, when I moved to Minnesota years ago, I was struck by the number of golden retrievers. And if Minnesota had a state dog, it
It
would
would
be
be,
golden retrievers. Now,
I think
back,
that's right, Pat. I think that's right.
okay, now
They are everywhere. They
they
are
are.
everywhere.
They are. So now back to the
It's a great
question.
family dog.
Okay.
Um, so golden retrievers and Labrador retrievers, that they have three traits that we really know are important in training a great service dog. Number one is they retrieve. We need dogs that retrieve items, right? Keys, credit cards, pill bottles, your remote control, the spoon you dropped while you were cooking, and they're willing to retrieve. They also work really well for treats. And so we use positive reinforcement training, which means we use a treat based approach. So we call that, when the dog does the cue we want them to do, they learn over 80 cues by the time they graduate. When we want them to do that cue, they get a treat. And we call that a tip because they're working for that money. So they love getting rewarded in treats, and they learn very quickly that doing this equals getting that treat very quickly. Little puppies, Goldens and Labs, can learn that pretty quickly. The third thing, which people might not know, and if you are a Golden and Lab person out there and you love your Goldens and Labs with all your hearts, which most Golden and Lab people do, Goldens and Labs are able to transfer affection more than other breeds. So after 2.5 years of being with their foster family, it is much harder on the human for that dog to leave the home and go work for somebody else than it is for the dog. Because whoever's going to feed and treat that dog next, that's who they're going to follow. And so you will see at our graduation, we have a graduation once a year where we bring all the new teams together, and the dog has not seen their foster family for that year. And they both come up on stage, and the graduate, we call it a graduate team, the person who got the dog and the dog come up on stage, and the foster meets them in the middle. And that little lab or golden wiggles their little lab and golden behind as fast as they can and gives a hug to their foster, but then immediately turns and looks back at the person they're working for, saying, "What do you want me to do next?"
Wow.
And so I have my labs, but I also have a German Shepherd puppy mix at home. And, a German Shepherd being raised to be a police dog or a SWAT dog, they're only going to work for one person. That person has to be the handler from training to the end of service, because the loyalty that is embedded in a German Shepherd or a dog like that, they couldn't do that. They could not be trained by someone and then have to go do that for somebody else.
Hmm.
But Goldens and Labs can.
Now, is there a difference between guide dogs and service dogs?
So guide dogs are a service dog. So we're accredited by Assistance Dogs International, which is something we're really very proud of. There's only 4 organizations in Minnesota that are providing service dogs that are accredited by this organization. So assistance dogs and service dogs are kind of, that word is interchangeable,
Okay.
but dogs that are providing a service, whether it is working with someone with a mobility issue or a guide dog, a medical dog or a police dog are all service dogs. They're providing a service. And then our facility dogs are kind of more seen as assistance dogs. They're providing a service for many. They are trained. So it's really these umbrella terms. So a guide dog is a service dog, and they're being trained by a service dog agency.
What do you think that the public or people misunderstand about service dogs or about people who need them?
Well, that's a real issue here in Minnesota right now is we have very lenient laws on who's a service dog and what's a service dog. And so I think there is some misguided information on a therapy dog or an emotional support dog. It's not a service dog. And so they do not go through the same training or public access training that service dogs do. And so why I totally believe, as I spoke earlier about, what a dog can do for the heart, and I think it's really important, we can't get those confused. We can't get what a service dog does for someone to be able to enter into a public situation versus an emotional support dog that is by no means, not doing something for that person, but it's not a trained service dog. And so we do have problems here in Minnesota as well as other states about what dogs can come into, your local grocery store
Yeah.
or, a restaurant or any of those things. Service dogs are protected by the American Disabilities Act, and emotional support dogs are not. That's a very big difference. So right now, it's Assistance Dogs International Week. And if you go on our Facebook page, we've been posting about the difference between service dogs and emotional support dogs and all of that. And so I think that's a little bit misconstrued. Unfortunately, you can go on to Amazon right now, and for $24, you can buy an assistance dog jacket and put it on your dog. And then that causes problems. If one of those dogs is unruly or one of those dogs even snips at one of an assistance dog, and now that dog, the service dog, is afraid to go back in public, we just kind of ruined that for that person. The 2.5 years of training just got unraveled. And now this person might not be able to go back in public because now their dog has learned a behavior that we didn't train for and has now had to, deal with a reactive dog in their way. I think it's complicated, but I think it's just a lot about education. And so I think that that's the biggest thing, for people to understand what's a service dog and what's an emotional support dog and where the differences are.
Is there some kind of badge or tag or marking that says trained service dog or something to put on their collars that would give them like a legitimacy if they're boarding a plane or going into a restaurant?
Not yet. That is something that we hopefully will work on in the future. That is really important to Helping Paws. Like I said, you can buy a service dog jacket or assistance dog jacket right online. So there's nothing differentiating a Helping Paws service dog going into a store next to someone who bought the jacket online. They look very similar. Ours say Helping Paws on them. So you can tell the difference that the ones that are certified and have passed tests will probably say the name of the agency that trained that dog. So that's really what to look for right now. But there's not yet a badge that like a clerk or someone at a store can easily go, yes, no, no,
Yeah.
yes. But that is something that I think will be very valuable and something we would like to work on.
Is the need for your service dogs growing?
Yes. We have about a 3-year wait list, and that's for many reasons. One, for our veterans and first responders with PTSD, the stigma of mental health is, thank goodness, lowering. And so some of our veterans and first responders are more willing to say, okay, a service dog would actually really help me get my life back. We have an aging population. So needs for people with physical disabilities are growing. And then just the amount of success we're having with facility dogs in our courthouses, in our schools, has upped that list significantly as well.
I'm curious if someone was in need of a service dog, what do they have to pay? Like, how do they pay for this? And is a dog
Yeah.
theirs once that happens?
So the beautiful thing about our organization, Pat, is we don't charge for that dog. That dog is worth about $40,000 by the time we're done training it, between the amount of training, food, veterinary care, all of the things that go into it. The trainers here, it's $100 application fee and then a $300 materials fee that even if you can't pay that, we don't charge for that. That just sends you home with a bag of food and a bowl and a leash and your collar and your pack. You could go online and find your loved one a service dog where you could pay $40,000, $50,000 and bring your loved one in and get trained with that service dog and walk out with your service dog and it's yours. We believe in the gift of the service dog, and we have incredible donors and corporate sponsors and foundations that help us make that happen. That is it's a never ending battle to raise those funds each and every year, but we are fully committed to never charging for one of these life-changing dogs.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a really tough question now.
Okay.
I know you have a gazillion stories, but can you share a story, a moment that just stopped you in your tracks and reminded you why this work matters?
So the minute you said that, the story popped into my head. And it is one of many, many, many. But when we're writing grants, I often try to get testimonials from our program staff, people who have received a dog. Before the person gets a dog, we do an intake. What's your life like? How independent do you feel? Do you leave your house? And then 6 months later, we go back out and ask the same questions to see how their life has changed with the service dog. So I was reading through those, hoping to get some, a bite out of there somewhere. And we matched a dog about a year ago with a 15-year-old young girl. And I might cry. And I cry every time I tell this story. I'm reading it, and her comment was, for the first time in my life, my mom doesn't have to open a door for me. I can do it by myself with my service dog. And so what that tells me is we don't truly understand what independence means for somebody, or not having independence, how horrible that must feel to not open your own bedroom door. But now she can, and she can leave her own room, and she gets in her wheelchair and her dog tugs that door open and out they walk together. And she got her dignity back.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's
So,
that's one of 100.
oh, I'm sure you have so many stories like that.
Yeah.
And that's what makes your work and your organization so spectacular. So,
Thank you.
if people listening want to get involved, what's one
Yeah.
thing they can do that would help or make a difference?
So I always say, to make Helping Paws happen, we need doers and givers. So you can be a doer or a giver. You can go to helpingpaws.org and you can volunteer. You can go to helpingpaws.org and you can donate. You can go to helpingpaws.org and do both. But it takes doers and givers to make this happen, and whatever inspires you. Some people are like, I'm allergic to dogs, but goodness, I believe in this work and I'm going to make a donation. And some people say, I can't make a financial contribution, but I certainly can open my door and my heart and have a dog live at my house. In my mind and in my heart, doers and givers to this organization are of equal value.
Yeah.
And so come be a doer or giver at Helping Paws.
Whoa. With that said, Alyssa, Thank you for walking us into the world of Helping Paws. This work goes way beyond training dogs. And as you
Yeah.
say, it's about freedom, connection, dignity, and showing up. Thanks for saying yes and for letting us see the heart behind it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pat. This was wonderful. I appreciate it.
And listeners, thank you for joining us today and see you next time. Take care.